Before you pack your bags for Siargao, here's what I wish I knew first. Siargao once had a reputation as one of the cheapest island paradises in the Philippines, drawing in foreigners from all over. But before you follow that path, here's what you need to know to avoid costly mistakes and see what it's really like to move there. I'm going to walk you through what no one tells you before moving to Siargao, the actual cost of living, what's changed over time, and the surprising realities expats face when they get here, all backed by insights from Expatistan, Budget Your Trip, and Internations. Make sure you watch until the end to uncover the real truth about island life here. It looked like paradise you could actually afford. Scroll through Instagram or TikTok, and Siargao felt almost unreal. Endless palm-lined roads, turquoise waters, smoothie bowls, and golden sunsets that looked straight out of a travel magazine. Influencers painted a picture of effortless island living, where every day blended into surf sessions, cafe hopping, and slow sun-soaked afternoons. The social media hype wasn't just strong, it was convincing enough to make people believe this wasn't a vacation, but a lifestyle within reach. And at the center of that dream was one powerful idea: affordable island life. Compared to big cities or even other tropical destinations, Siargao was often described as cheap. Almost unbelievably so. Rent was low, food seemed budget-friendly, and motorbikes were all you needed to get around. For many, it felt like you could trade in the stress of urban living for a simpler, happier life, without draining your savings. Then came the perfect timing: remote work. As more people started working online, Siargao quickly became a hotspot for digital nomads, chasing that balance between productivity and freedom. Mornings could be spent answering emails, afternoons catching waves, and evenings watching the sky turn orange by the beach. The surf culture added to the appeal: laid back, welcoming, and seemingly carefree. The idea was simple: live in paradise for a fraction of the cost. It sounded like a life hack everyone wished they had discovered sooner. And for a while, it felt like the secret was out. You probably imagined waking up to the sound of waves, not alarms. In your mind, life in Siargao was going to be slow, intentional, and almost cinematic. You'd start your mornings with a quiet walk along the beach, maybe grab a smoothie bowl, open your laptop for a few hours, and then reward yourself with a sunset surf session. No traffic, no rush, no pressure, just balance. Work when you need to, relax when you want to. It felt like the perfect reset button. You also thought everything would be easy. Finding a place to stay? Simple. Cheap beachfront rooms or cozy villas just waiting for you. Making friends? Effortless, because everyone there seemed like-minded. Travelers, creatives, people chasing freedom just like you. Even daily life felt like it would flow naturally, from renting a motorbike to discovering hidden cafes and quiet corners of the island. And financially, it all made sense in your head. You pictured your expenses dropping, while your quality of life somehow improved. Lower rent, affordable food, fewer unnecessary costs. You weren't just escaping the city, you were upgrading your lifestyle without paying more for it. There was also this expectation that happiness would come easier, that being surrounded by nature, ocean air, and a laid-back community would automatically make life feel lighter. Less stress, more presence, more meaning. What you thought Siargao would be wasn't just a place, it was a version of life that felt simpler, freer, and somehow more real. That was the expectation. It's now time to face the reality. Finding a place to live in Siargao isn't just hard. It feels like a race you didn't train for. What changed? At first, it was subtle. More tourists started arriving. More content flooded social media. And more people decided they didn't just want to visit. They wanted to stay, but the island didn't expand with that demand. There's only so much land, so many homes, and so much infrastructure to go around. Limited supply met a wave of rising demand, and prices began to climb, quietly at first, then all at once. Suddenly, the idea of affordable island living started slipping away. The simple beachfront huts and budget-friendly apartments became harder to find, replaced by higher-priced villas and modern rentals catering to a new kind of resident, those willing to pay more for comfort and convenience. Long-term rentals, especially, became a challenge. What used to be easy to secure for months at a time turned into short-term stays with premium rates. Many property owners realized they could earn more from nightly or weekly bookings, so long-term options started disappearing. And when something decent did become available, it didn't stay on the market for long. Foreign demand added another layer to the shift. As more expats and digital nomads arrived with stronger purchasing power, prices adjusted accordingly. Landlords began pricing properties based on what the highest bidder could afford, not what locals or long-term residents were used to paying. The biggest shock? Finding a place wasn't just expensive, it was competitive. You weren't just browsing listings anymore. You were messaging instantly, scheduling viewings the same day, and sometimes even committing without hesitation just to secure a spot. What once felt like an easy move to paradise started to feel like trying to break into an exclusive club, and not everyone could get in. You arrive expecting your money to stretch, but somehow it disappears faster than it ever did in the city. At first, it's small things. A coffee here, a smoothie bowl there. Then you notice the menus. Restaurants aren't priced for locals anymore. They're priced for tourists and short-term visitors. What felt like a cheap island escape starts to look a lot like a vacation tab that never ends. Eating out, which you thought would be affordable, becomes one of your biggest daily expenses. Then come the groceries. Because Siargao is an island, a lot of goods are imported, and that changes everything. Basic items that would normally be cheap suddenly cost significantly more. Fresh produce isn't always consistent, and when it is, it can still be pricey depending on supply. You start realizing that cooking at home doesn't always save you as much as you expected. And it's not just the big expenses, it's the accumulation of everyday living. Motorbike rentals, fuel, cafe work sessions, weekend trips, even reliable internet. Each one feels manageable on its own, but together they stack up quickly. Before you know it, your monthly budget looks very different from what you planned. The real shift hits when you understand this simple truth. You're not paying local prices. You're paying island plus expat prices. The cost of convenience, comfort, and accessibility on an island like this comes at a premium, especially in a place that's grown so quickly in popularity. What used to be marketed as a budget-friendly paradise has evolved into something else entirely. And while it's still beautiful, still worth experiencing, it's no longer the cheap destination so many people once believed it to be. It's a lifestyle that requires a lot more financial awareness than the dream ever suggested. Keep watching because the reality about this island paradise doesn't end here. You expect things to get better as prices go up, but in Siargao, that's not always how it works. At some point, you start noticing the gaps. Not in the views, but in the things you rely on every single day. Take the internet, for example. For a place that attracts remote workers, you'd assume fast, stable connections would be a given. But reality hits during an important call or deadline, connections drop, speeds fluctuate, and backups become a necessity, not a luxury. Then there's power. Brownouts aren't just rare inconveniences. They can be part of weekly life. Sometimes they're scheduled, sometimes they're not. You learn to charge everything in advance, plan your work around outages, and accept that productivity can suddenly pause without warning. Healthcare is another quiet reality that doesn't show up in those dreamy travel posts. Basic clinics are available, but options are limited when it comes to more serious or specialized care. For anything beyond routine needs, people often have to travel to bigger cities. It's the kind of detail you don't think about until you actually need it. And that's where the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. As the cost of living rises, you naturally expect improvements in infrastructure to match. But in many cases, that balance hasn't caught up. You're paying higher rent, higher food prices, higher daily costs, but the systems around you don't always reflect that increase. The realization is simple, but it changes how you see everything. You're paying more, but not always getting more. It doesn't mean Siargao isn't worth it, but it does mean the experience is different from what most people imagine. The beauty is real, but so are the trade-offs, and learning to navigate both becomes part of the reality of living here. It's strange how a place can look exactly the same, but feel completely different. There was a time when Siargao felt like a quiet surf town where everyone seemed to know each other, and life moved at its own unhurried pace. Days were simple, routines were slow, and the island had this calm, almost intimate energy. But over time, that atmosphere began to shift. What was once laid back and low-key started turning into something busier, louder, and more fast-paced. The change became more obvious as more tourists arrived, not just travelers passing through, but influencers, content creators, and short-term visitors chasing that same picture-perfect experience. Cafes got fuller, beaches got more crowded, and the once quiet roads started to feel a little more alive than before. On the surface, it looked like growth, like success, but underneath, something subtle was changing. With the constant flow of new faces, the sense of community began to loosen. It wasn't as easy to form deep, lasting connections when people were only staying for a few days or weeks. Conversations became shorter, friendships more temporary. The tight-knit feeling that once defined the island started to fade, replaced by a more transient, ever-changing social scene. And that's when you start to notice the difference, not in what you see, but in what you feel. The palm trees are still there. The waves still roll in the same way. The sunsets are just as breathtaking. It still looks like paradise, but it doesn't always feel like it. That doesn't mean the magic is gone. It just means it's different now. The island has evolved, shaped by the very attention that made it famous. And for many, adjusting to that new version of Siargao becomes part of the journey itself. Make sure to watch all the way through as I share with you my personal turning point. At some point, it hits you, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, until you can't ignore it anymore. I remember realizing that I wasn't living the version of Siargao I came for. The picture I had in my head, simple, carefree, affordable, started to feel further and further away from my actual day-to-day life. It wasn't one big moment, but a buildup of small things that didn't quite match the dream. The budget pressure was the first thing that crept in. What I thought would be a low-cost lifestyle slowly turned into constant mental calculations. Rent, food, transport, internet, it all added up faster than I expected. Instead of feeling free, I found myself thinking about expenses more often than I wanted to. That sense of ease I imagined started getting replaced by the need to keep up financially. Then came the lifestyle mismatch. I thought I'd naturally fall into that relaxed island rhythm, but reality felt different. Work still demanded structure, stability, and consistency, things that weren't always easy to maintain here. The environment that looked so freeing on the outside didn't always support the kind of routine I actually needed. And that's when expectations really collided with reality. I came in thinking that changing locations would automatically change how life felt, that being surrounded by beauty would somehow simplify everything else. But the truth is, your habits, your needs, your responsibilities, they all come with you. That turning point wasn't about disappointment, it was about clarity. Understanding that the dream I bought into wasn't wrong, it just wasn't complete. And once you see that, you start asking a different question. Not, is this paradise, but is this the right life for me? It didn't happen overnight, but it also wasn't random. To understand why Siargao changed, you have to look at the forces that quietly reshaped it from the outside in. The first and most powerful trigger was social media exposure. Once Siargao started appearing everywhere, travel reels, influencer posts, hidden gem lists, it stopped being hidden. What used to be a quiet surfscape suddenly became a global bucket list destination. Attention turned into arrivals, and arrivals turned into pressure. Then came the remote work boom. When work from anywhere became the norm, people no longer needed to choose between career and location. Siargao became the perfect experiment. Tropical scenery, cafe culture, surf breaks between meetings. Digital nomads started arriving in waves, staying longer, and looking for something beyond short vacations. That shift alone changed the rhythm of the island. At the same time, foreign demand surged. Not just tourists, but long-term expats, investors, and lifestyle movers entered the picture. With stronger purchasing power, they unintentionally reset price expectations for housing, food, and services. What once felt local and accessible slowly adapted to a new global audience willing to pay more for the experience. But here's the part that often gets overlooked. Siargao is still a small island with limited resources. Land is finite. Infrastructure takes time to build. Supply chains are constrained. Electricity, internet, healthcare, housing, none of these can expand instantly to match sudden demand. So when interest grew faster than capacity, imbalance was inevitable. And that's really the core of it. Siargao didn't change by accident. It changed because of attention. Every viral video, every remote worker relocation, every wave of new demand stacked on top of a system that simply wasn't built for that scale, that fast. The island didn't suddenly become something else. It just started responding to the number of people who wanted a piece of it. And that response reshaped everything from prices to pace to perception. What we reveal to be the truth about this island paradise might just be a shock to you. The real truth about Siargao is that it never changed alone. People changed it by loving it too much at the same time. Siargao didn't get expensive by itself. It got expensive because everyone chased the same cheap paradise idea. What started as a hidden escape slowly turned into a global destination. And with every new wave of visitors, demand grew faster than the island could naturally keep up. Ironically, the more people went there looking for affordability and simplicity, the less affordable and simple it became. There's a pattern you start to notice once you zoom out. The moment a place becomes known as cheap and amazing, that's usually when it stops being both. Attention brings popularity. Popularity brings demand, and demand reshapes everything from rent to food to the overall pace of life. Siargao is just one example of a cycle that happens in many paradise destinations around the world. And that leads to the real takeaway. Don't move somewhere because it was cheap. Move because it still fits your lifestyle today, because was cheap is already in the past. What matters is whether the reality of a place matches the way you actually want to live right now, not the version that exists in old posts or viral videos. So is Siargao still worth it? The answer isn't simple. It depends on what you're looking for. Siargao is worth it if you prioritize lifestyle over cost. If you're willing to adapt your expectations, accept trade-offs, and embrace a slower, less predictable rhythm. If you value nature, surf culture, and a community that's still forming and evolving, there's still something deeply special here. But it is not ideal if you're primarily chasing a low cost of living. If you expect city-level convenience, perfect infrastructure, or ultra-stable systems, you're going to feel the friction quickly. Because at the end of it all, Siargao is still paradise. But it's no longer a shortcut to a cheap life. What Siargao offers now is something more layered. It's a place that gives you something different. something real, beautiful, imperfect, and constantly changing. Real because it doesn't hide its challenges behind the scenery. Beautiful because despite those challenges, the island still has a way of stopping you in your tracks with its sunsets, its waves, and its quiet moments. Imperfect because life here doesn't always run smoothly, and you learn to adjust rather than control, and constantly changing because the island is still growing, still adapting, still being shaped by every person who chooses to call it home, even temporarily. And maybe that's the real truth. Paradise was never meant to be perfect or easy. It was always meant to be experienced. Click on the next video for another deep dive into what life overseas actually looks like beyond the travel dream.